Hey guys, what's up and welcome back. So if you're new here, I'm Liz. This is Korean Crime Time. I'm your host. I sit down, I talk about a true crime case, and most of the time there's art involved. With that being said, I hope that piqued your interest for you to keep on keeping on and keep on coming back, keep on having fun with the videos that I keep reporting to you guys about. I put a lot of hard work and research into these cases, and a lot of these cases just need to be brought back into the limelight so people know that it's not just a world filled with the current cases that are happening. There's a lot of cold cases that are still on cops' desks. So yeah, let's get into today's true crime case.
I've been dreaming all night, bringing me some inspiration.
So today we are going to be talking about Little Lord Fauntleroy. Now, this is a cold case. This, as of next month, he will be unidentified for 101 years. Yeah. So, well, I mean, technically it would be, as of March, it would be 101 years, but anywho, yeah. This case really, because of the time that this happened and because it's a young child, it makes me really sad that he had to go out of the world this way, and I wish that hopefully there is enough DNA left in his bones if they exhume him. That way they could possibly identify him, because it's just sad. Yeah, I feel really, really bad about. Okay, so obviously that's his nickname, is Little Lord Fauntleroy. He was found in Waukesha, Wisconsin in 1921. So on March 8th of 1921, the remains of a boy was found floating in a pond near the O'Laughlin Stone Company in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Authorities believed that he was between the ages of 5 and 7. He had blonde hair and brown eyes, and a tooth was missing from his lower jaw, so he had lost his first tooth. And it was also noted that he was struck with a blunt instrument, which would coincide with his cause of death, which ended up being determined that he died due to blunt force trauma. This boy, it's possible he could have been in the water for several months. He was dressed in a gray sweater, a Munsing underwear, black stockings, a blouse, patent leather shoes, and the quality of the clothing he was wearing was that of an affluent family. It was very high scale clothing that he was wearing. So with him being approximated to be about 5 to 7, that puts his date of birth, or approximate year of birth, as 1914 to 1916. But they do believe that he died in the range of autumn or fall, if fall's real name is Autumn, but in autumn of 1920 to about February of 1921. So that's a good range of when. So that range, and then him being found in March of 1921. So yeah. Police would display his body after he was sent to the funeral home, obviously to, do the normal jazz, and after his autopsy. So they put his body on display in hopes that somebody would claim him as their child, but unfortunately nobody would claim him, and he would be buried and put to rest at the Prairie Home Cemetery in Waukesha, March 17th of 1921. So he was found on the 18th, and he would be buried on the 17th. There was an employee of the O'Laughlin Company said that he was approached by a couple about 5 weeks prior to this little boy's body being found, and the woman that he saw, she was wearing a red sweater, asked if he had seen a young boy in the area. She was hysterically crying, and the man accompanying her was seen watching the area where the child was found, where little boy Fauntleroy was found. They then later left in a Ford vehicle, and they have never been found since then. So my thoughts is that that was possibly his caretaker or his parents. With the way that the mom was hysterically crying, or the woman was hysterically crying, I would take it as that she's either guilty he's missing, or mom guilt. Yeah, so after that couple was seen in the store, they received a tip that a woman had died by suicide in the very same pond that this boy was found. They also, what they did was that they set off dynamite in the pond to see if any bodies would come to the surface, but even with their best efforts, they never found an additional body. So there is a possible scenario for little Lord Fauntleroy, is that he was possibly abducted from a wealthy family in another area and disposed of somewhere else to prevent his identification. And so after investigation had come to a complete halt, money was raised by a local woman. Her name is Minnie Conrad, and she raised money for him to be buried in the Prairie Home Cemetery in Waukesha. And eventually she would be buried in the same cemetery in 1940, after she died at the age of 73. So this woman, out of the goodness of her heart, raised money to have him buried because he didn't have any family to bury him. However, there has been sights of a woman wearing a heavy veil who would on occasion lay flowers on the grave of this unidentified boy, and some have speculated that this woman knows the identity of him. So in 1949, a medical examiner for the Milwaukee, from Milwaukee, suggested that investigators felt that there may have been a connection between this unidentified boy and that of Homer LeMay. Now, Homer LeMay was a 6-year-old who disappeared around the same time that this young boy died. LeMay was said that, by his father, said that he died in a vehicle accident during a trip to South America, when he was being cared by a family described as the Nortons, but there's no records of his death. So Edmund LeMay, which is Homer's dad, stated that he learned of his son's death after receiving info from a South American newspaper that detailed the accident. He also was accused of falsifying his wife's signature while she was missing, but he later was found not guilty. So this ended up with detectives not being able to find any information about any such event that happened, or even the existence of the supposed Nortons that took his son. So they believe that Edmund's father is involved in Homer's disappearance, that there's no legitimate connection with Homer LeMay and little Lord Fauntleroy. It's this case is really it irks me, because this boy could be identified, but yet nobody wants to identify him. You know what I mean? That, and where he was found, he was found in a quarry, and besides his expensive clothing, nobody could identify him. Nobody came forward to even be there for him. You know what I mean? So the person that found him, it was a man named John Brilk. I think it's Brilk. It's Brlich, Brilk. He was an employee of the O'Laughlin store company, and he was just walking near the quarry when he found this boy, and he was just floating on the pond. And then he rushed back to the office, and he contacted the sheriff's department. Yep. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. It's hard on my heart. Maybe it's just because I'm a parent, and it seems very just tragic because it's a young person that shouldn't have died, and died under homicidal circumstances, but I don't know. Yeah, I will say too that when they found him, they said that his attire was strange. So, I mean, it could possibly be that they dressed up his body so that he would look presentable when he was be found. I know that sounds really morbid, but it is quite possible. It's quite possible. That, and the nickname that he has is actually based off of a book that was written, like a children's book written by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Yeah, and the only thing that police could really still get out of this case is that, based on like his clothing, is that he came from money. There was nothing else that they could understand from this case. Yeah, but that, my friends, that is the case of Little Lord Fauntleroy. Though very tragic, very interesting. Like, there's another theory that there's a couple, they had the boy, or the, like, if they were watching him, they sent him off to play so they could have sex, and tragically he fell into the pond and he died. Yeah, he did have a deep cut on his head, so a deep laceration that indicated blunt force trauma. So the examiner also determined that there was a lack of water in his lungs. That meant that he had died prior to being put into the pond. So, whoever killed him put him in the pond. They did, however, offer a financial reward for any information to find out who he was. That was about $250 at that time, but nobody came around and came forward. Eventually they would raise it to about $1,000, but nobody still would come around. Also, it is known that a unknown person had written "Our Darling" on the lid of the casket that this boy was put in for his burial. It sounds really strange. They don't know who did it. I mean, it couldn't have been Minnie Conrad. I mean, it could have been, but it says "Our Darling," so that there's more of a heartfelt message behind that. To this day is still a great mystery in Waukesha. Hopefully one that we will find out about.
Never meant to love no one, but baby,